Imagine losing your job while prices are exploding. Your paycheck shrinks, groceries double in price, and gas stations run out of fuel. The tools that are supposed to fix the economy only make it worse. This actually happened. In the 1970s, the world's richest economies broke a rule economists thought was unbreakable. And that disaster has a name: stagflation. Economists believed this wasn't possible. They said inflation and unemployment were opposites. One rose, the other fell. Then the 1970s arrived and proved them wrong. In this video, we'll break down what stagflation really is, why economists didn't see it coming, how oil, politics, and psychology collided, and how one brutal decision finally ended it. If you want to understand why central banks fear inflation more than recessions today, this story explains everything. After World War II, the West felt unstoppable. America, Europe, Japan, all rebuilding, all growing. Growth was strong, unemployment was low, and wages rose with productivity. Economists had a simple rule: if unemployment went up, inflation went down. If inflation went up, unemployment went down. This relationship was called the Phillips curve. You could choose your trade-off. Governments believed they could engineer the right economic balance. A little inflation? Fine, just spend more. Too much unemployment? Then stimulate demand. It worked until it didn't. In the 1960s, the U.S. was spending big: the Vietnam War, social programs, and infrastructure. But taxes didn't rise enough to pay for it. So governments chose the easy option: they printed money. At first, nobody noticed. Inflation crept up slowly, wages followed, and growth stayed strong. This felt manageable, and then the foundation cracked. By the late 1960s, the system was straining and the dollar was still tied to gold. The problem was there were more dollars than gold to back them. Foreign governments noticed. They started asking questions, and then they started asking for gold. In 1971, President Nixon made a historic decision. He took the U.S. dollar off gold. From that moment on, money was backed by trust, not metal. This gave governments freedom, but it removed discipline. Inflation pressures started to build quietly. Prices began rising faster. Governments tried wage and price controls. They tried pretending it was temporary, but inflation kept rising. Then came the shock. In 1973, Middle Eastern oil producers cut supply. Oil wasn't a luxury. It powered cars, trucks, factories, heating, and electricity. Oil prices quadrupled, and overnight, transportation costs exploded, manufacturing became expensive, and electricity prices surged. Oil was embedded in everything. Normally, inflation came from high demand, but this inflation came from supply collapse. That distinction changed everything. Businesses faced impossible math. Costs were up and sales were down. Factories produced less, businesses laid off workers, but prices rose anyway. This was the nightmare scenario. For the first time, inflation and unemployment rose together. High unemployment plus high inflation equals stagflation. The Phillips curve broke. Paychecks lagged behind prices, savings lost value, and gas lines stretched for blocks. People rushed to spend money before it lost more value. That behavior made inflation worse. This wasn't just economics, it was psychology. The standard playbook failed. If governments stimulated the economy, inflation got worse. If they raised interest rates, unemployment skyrocketed. There was no painless option. Wages chased prices, prices chased wages. A feedback loop formed, and there was no safe move. Every lever pulled something apart. People stopped trusting money. They spent faster and saved less. Workers demanded higher wages, and companies raised prices to pay them. Those prices sparked new demands. Once expectations changed, inflation sustained itself. No politician wanted to be responsible for a recession, so they delayed, and delay made the cure worse. In 1979, everything changed. Paul Volcker became chairman of the Federal Reserve. He understood something brutal. Inflation wasn't a technical problem, it was a credibility problem. He made a decision no politician wanted. Volcker raised interest rates. Again and again, until borrowing became painful. Rates hit nearly 20%. Construction collapsed, businesses failed, and unemployment spiked. Recessions followed, but inflation finally broke. Volcker restored credibility. People believed the Fed will not let inflation win. Once expectations changed, inflation collapsed. The economy eventually recovered. The cost was enormous. Entire industries disappeared and families suffered. But inflation fell and stayed down. Stagflation ended not with elegance, but with force. Central banks today are obsessed with inflation because they remember the 1970s. Stagflation taught the world that inflation can come from supply shocks. Expectations matter as much as money supply, and fixing inflation may require short-term pain. That lesson shapes policy to this day. Stagflation wasn't just an economic anomaly, it was a warning. A reminder that economies aren't machined. They're systems built on trust, incentives, and belief. And once trust in money breaks, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. If this helped you understand why inflation terrifies central banks, subscribe for more economic history. Remember, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does leave clues.